Hello, this is Socially Triggered. This video I'm going to be a bit more philosophical than usual. I'm going to tell you a few short stories, and that way I'm going to try to convey an idea that I was thinking about for a while. Like most YouTubers, I'm always trying to get more viewers to my channel, and one of the things that was recommended to me was the idea of doing comment videos or videos looking at other people's videos and basically reactionary videos to those. And the one that was recommended that I do a reactionary video to was David Pakman. Now, I really think that David Pakman is not a bad guy. He really tries to, do research, tries to understand the topic that he's, presenting. But the problem with him is he's very progressive or regressive in the way he thinks. The video that I was going to in this video review was basically his one about race and IQ. And his whole video was basically denying race and denying that there's a difference between the races in IQ, which has been debunked so many times that I'll probably get to it, but I'm not going to get to it in this video. But that video led me down a rabbit hole of sorts. What happened was I was preparing to do that video, and so I did the basic research, looking up the skull differences between the different races and how that actually impacts the cranium size of the different races, and how there's differences in the way the brain is made up between the different races. And I was, looking at all that stuff, and then I, fell upon some statistical stuff where I saw that there was a stat where it basically showed all the different countries of the world and what their IQs were of the people within those countries. So I thought, wow, this is very interesting. And then I looked at the very bottom of the list, and I was like, whoa, 54 was the score. And it was for the Congo Pygmies. Now, I'm very curious about African culture and history, and I actually think the Pygmies are pretty cool. And then just above the Pygmies, actually tied with the Pygmies, was the Kalahari Bushmen. Now, the Kalahari Bushmen are actually pretty cool. They do some, they're known for their hunting skills, and they're pretty cool people. And I decided to watch some videos to learn about their culture and see, how can they really survive with such a low IQ? 54 is what we normally would think of is dull normal is around 80. Usually moronic is around 60 IQ. So I was thinking, wow, how could this civilization survive at such a low IQ? So I decided to watch some videos, and I watched this one video which was very interesting. And this is where the rabbit hole kind of goes from looking at race and IQ to looking at this one particular group, then to this one video. And the video was, I'm going to link it in the description. The video was very interesting because it was these Westerners that were basically going to Africa and trying to do good. They were providing medicine, they were providing back massages, and all this wonderful stuff to try to help the poor Africans. However, their interpretation of what they were doing was a little bit backward. So it kind of makes me think of the idea of this, that if you saw somebody living in a hut that's just like falling apart, you saw them wearing rags for clothes, you saw them having very little food, very little water, not clean water, and you see them doing things that we would think as being primitive. Do we help those people? Now that's, do we show them, hey, this is how you get your water clean, or this is how you grow more food, or this is how you can make clothing, or do we give them clothing, or do we give them medicine? Now, normally you would answer, yes, of course, you got to help people out, but is that the right thing to do? So alt-right go on about is the idea of protection of one's identity as a nation, the protection of the nation's identity. that the country should remain intact culturally. And protectionism of culture is almost impossible to do, frankly. However, the idea is sound that if we bring in cultures from all over the world, and we will gradually degrade our own culture. And I was thinking more and more about this with this African group, and that's exactly what's happening to them. This African group was basically deposed from the area that they were normally living in, and they were now living in a much inferior area, much harsher environment. Not really accustomed, they weren't really accustomed to it, but they were trying to make do with what they had. And what would end up happening is they just wouldn't survive as well as they normally could. Probably they, just like most primitive groups, they would have a higher death rate than we would have. They would die younger. They would suffer from malnutrition. They would suffer from many of the things that our ancestors or anyone's ancestors had as a life. So the question is, do we help those people? And if we do help those people, is there a problem in that? That we're going to basically destroy their culture? And it's, to me, in a way, it's very sad to see that. Even though they are suffering compared to the way we would think people should live, they have some things that, in a way, are better than what we have. For example, they really enjoyed their lives. They were happy people. They didn't have the stresses of the modern age. There was many things that were kind of good things about their society. And the thing is, they were adapted to that way of life. They're genetically adapted to that way of life. So it's intrinsic to their being to live a certain way. Now, if all of a sudden we say, well, you're living the wrong way, well, they've evolved to live that way. So it's sort of like what you see with the Inuit. Now, the Inuit, they're actually genetically designed so that when they're living in their natural environment, which is the frigid Arctic cold, they will basically go through long periods of starvation. And so what they'll do is they'll eat a lot when they have food. But when they don't have food, well, they basically starve. But their bodies are designed to be very efficient. That they basically are used to not getting food all the time or every day. So what happens is when you introduce them to our culture, which is driving to the grocery store and buying food, well, what happens is they become obese. And there's a real problem with that because they're basically genetically designed for a certain lifestyle, but we're bringing them into a modern lifestyle which they're not suited for. So this is sort of the rabbit hole that I was going in, where I was thinking, wow, where do we go with all this stuff? I mean, it is a fact that we are designed for our environment. And though the modern culture has many benefits, and I'm actually a big fan of the modern culture. I'm a big fan of technology. I wouldn't be using YouTube if I wasn't a big fan of technology. But the point is, have we gone in the wrong direction with certain cultures by assuming that they can adapt to our culture? So the idea is, what do you do if you see somebody living in a hut, looks like they're about to starve, looks like they have no proper clothing, no proper water, and none of the benefits that we have of modern society? Do we let them live like that? Or do we make the judgment that they are living as primitives and that we should come in and save them? The answer to that is not a simple yes or no. And there's implications to each answer. If you say yes, then you're destroying that culture. If you say no, then you're never letting that culture grow. So this has been Socially Triggered. I hope this gives you some food for thought. And I'd like to hear people's comments. What would you do? Would you make changes to a culture that's in some ways primitive? Or would you let it exist the way it's going to exist? Or is it just inevitable that all cultures are just going to become one big global mishmash, and there's going to be just one unique culture that's shared across the world, and individual cultures are going to be lost, and we just have to face that fact? Or can we save these different cultures? So just some food for thought. I hope to hear people's feedback about this, and I will get back to doing that David Pakman response video. Thank you.